All right, good afternoon. All right, so you had the break, you're all ready to go. I think many of us have been very excited about this day, particularly for the moment we're about to embark on here. So let me give you a little background of Brent Gleason is a Navy SEAL combat veteran with multiple tours to Iraq and Africa, where his team's primary objective was running capture or kill missions, working in conjunction with the CIA. So before I read the rest of his bio, I'd like to give Brent a round of applause and appreciation for his service. Upon leaving SEAL Team 5, Brent turned his discipline and battlefield lessons to the world of business and has become an accomplished entrepreneur, writer, and acclaimed speaker on topics ranging from leadership to entrepreneurship and marketing. Brent is the co-founder of CMO of Internet Marketing Inc., a full-service digital marketing agency recognized by prestigious Inc. 500 and the San Diego Business Journal as one of the fastest growing private companies in the country the last 3 years in a row. Brent has also starred in several reality shows, including NBC's Stars Earn Stripes, where he and Chris Kyle of American Sniper, along with other formal special operations professionals, were paired with celebrities such as Nick Lachey, Dean Cain, Todd Palin, Terry Crews, to compete and raise money for charities like Wounded Warrior Project. In his leadership presentations, Brent shares lessons from the battlefield, which he applies daily to growing and leading high-performance teams in the business world. Brent was recently honored with the Leadership Award at the Brand Diego Awards in San Diego for his outstanding leadership achievements in the community. You can learn more about his leadership philosophies in his weekly columns on Inc.com and Forbes.com. Gleason earned his undergraduate degree in finance and economics from Southern Methodist University, studied at Oxford University in England, and earned a master's degree in real estate finance and development from the University of San Diego. Brent is on the board of the Navy Special Warfare Family Foundation and the San Diego Ad Club. His family is an ambassador family for the March of Dimes. With that, please help me welcoming Brent Gleason.
Thank you very much. Can you guys hear me all right? Yeah? I'm wearing like 87 microphones, so hopefully you guys can. How's everybody doing today? It's good to be in Dallas. This morning my flight was delayed 2 hours, so I apologize for you guys having to rearrange the schedule. They said it was a weather delay. I landed and I'm like, really? It was too sunny for the plane to land? So anyways, it's an honor and pleasure to be here with you guys today. I'm also proud to announce that my wife gave birth to our third child a few weeks ago. So if I seem a little fatigued or if I literally collapse right here on the stage at some point, please don't judge me. It just might happen. Well, today, I know you guys have a lot of topics around safety, and we'll touch on that. I also want to talk about different things around leadership and high-performance teams, building trust and accountability within teams, because it's all relevant to working hard jobs, dangerous jobs, being a team every day, supporting one another to accomplish the mission. And then we'll get into some Q&A afterwards, and you guys can ask me whatever you want. Sound good? All right. Navy SEALs are known to be the most elite and feared special operations fighting force in the entire world. Also widely known to have a culture based on trust, teamwork, and a shared sense of purpose. And I'll tell you an interesting fact. In our history, no SEAL has ever been captured as a prisoner of war. Ever. Why, might you ask? Well, maybe you're a bit of a historian, or perhaps more likely you've seen the Gerard Butler movie 300. Yes, guys? There's a lot of dudes in this room. I'm sure most of you have seen it. Remember all the guys with the incredibly ripped bodies? I've convinced myself that has to be digital enhancement. It's just too utterly depressing to think otherwise. I'm not a 28-year-old SEAL anymore. I'm a over-the-hill father of 3. Or maybe you've read the book Gates of Fire by Stephen Pressfield. Then you'll recall the story of King Leonidas and his brave elite. 300 Spartan warriors facing annihilation against a 1 million strong Persian army that was invading their lands. And during this vicious battle, an Arcadian captain that had partnered with King Leonidas in his fight against the Persians frantically consults him, basically saying, look, we need to weigh our options here. We are getting our asses kicked. At this point, it is retreat or surrender. And King Leonidas immediately and passionately looked at him and says, well, that's an easy decision for us, Arcadian, because Spartans never retreat and Spartans never surrender. And every single one of them died that day defending their freedoms. I can think of countless gunfights, many of which have resulted in the deaths of my fallen SEAL brothers. And in the instances where it became that last man standing type of situation, and later teams were sent in to recover the bodies and of course hunt down the enemy, a common theme always occurred. The bodies of our fallen brothers would be found surrounded by their own rifle and pistol magazines. Every single rifle magazine completely empty. Every single pistol magazine empty. No grenades left in their chest harnesses, because these brave warriors, despite being mortally wounded and completely outnumbered, kept fighting and fighting until they had nothing left to give, until they were literally down to throwing rocks. Each and every man on the team knowing and trusting that not one man would ever stop fighting, win or lose, until that fight was done. That level of trust and persistence reminds me of a quote by Martin Luther King Jr. that says, if you can't fly, you run, and if you can't run, you walk, and if you can't walk, you crawl, but no matter what, you keep moving forward. In the SEAL teams, we have a creed that embodies our culture and our values. And a similar line from that creed says, I will not quit. I persevere and thrive in adversity. And if knocked down, I will get back up every time. I am never out of the fight. And that, my friends, is the true essence of being what we call all in all the time. What do you guys think? Pretty cool? Can I please have my military veterans in the room stand up? Can you give these guys a round of applause, please? Thank you for your service. Thank you. All right, sit down, sit down. Outside of working this job, that is in fact the best job in the world. In all seriousness though, by saying that and showing you that video and with some of the content we'll cover today, I first want you to know that I am in no way by any means glorifying war. War is messy, It's violent. It's filled with fear and self-doubt. What I'm doing is laying the foundation for how the most elite teams in the world train to fight and fight to win, and how groups of driven individuals can come together as a team to achieve the seemingly impossible. Being all in all the time is a philosophy that we have in the SEAL teams. Simply put, it's about persistence, about never giving up, and giving everything you do, everything you've got, and nothing less, just like King Leonidas and his brave Spartan warriors. But what does that really mean, to be all in? Is that even realistic? Is it responsible of us as leaders or members of teams in any environment to pour ourselves wholly and completely into every single project or activity we can possibly get our hands on? I believe, of course, that if we were investing our time wisely in the right activities that are aligned with the right priorities, that are in line with meeting the goals of our team, then yes, it is our duty and responsibility to be all in. Well, in December of 1999, I made my decision to be all in. In a fit of youthful indiscretion, I quit my corporate finance job and joined the United States Navy. A decision that would forever change my life and set me on the path that I'm on today. So this afternoon, I would like to tell you a little bit about that journey, share some stories from the battlefield, but more importantly, talk about leadership at all levels, teamwork, persistence, adaptation, and how elite teams like you can leverage trust, teamwork, and accountability to achieve the seemingly impossible. So let's dive in. I grew up in the great nation of Texas. Who are my Texans in the room? Anybody? Yeah! Right here in Dallas, to be specific. I was a swimmer in high school, played rugby in college, where I attended Southern Methodist University, earning a degree in finance and economics. And upon graduation, I took a job as an entry-level financial analyst with a commercial real estate investment firm. And you're thinking, wait a minute, Brent. How in the hell did you go from being a nerdy entry-level financial analyst to a Navy SEAL? And we're all patriots in the room, right? You're probably thinking, well, clearly it was some sense of honor and duty, God and country and all of that, right? No, this was actually just a good old-fashioned case of peer pressure. It's a powerful thing, my friends. See, I had a buddy here in Dallas back at SMU. Now, he was, in fact, training and preparing to one day graduate, join the Navy, and attempt to make it into the notorious Navy SEAL training program. It was his passion, his purpose in life, his reason for being. And being the curious friend that I am, I was rather intrigued by this aggressive and, let's face it, frankly, highly unrealistic career path that he was embarking upon. So I did some of my own research, read a couple books, and when I discovered that this was the most difficult and challenging special operations military training program in the world, with almost guaranteed failure, and when you fail, and fail you shall, the Navy's just going to stick you with some job, whatever job it is, probably some job you really don't want. I'm thinking, what kind of foolish idiot would risk his career on a decision like that? Apparently this foolish idiot. I said, you know what, that sounds fantastic. Sign me up, let's do it. So I started immersing myself and learning as much as I possibly could about SEAL history and culture, what it means to be part of that type of an elite community. And we started training together harder and harder and harder. And pretty soon my close friends, family, and colleagues, of course, started realizing this growing passion for my own possible career path change. And one day I was talking to my twin brother, running this idea by him before I ran it up the chain of command to my parents, who would no doubt be a little surprised about this dramatic shift. And you know what he was doing? Supportive sibling that he is? Yes, of course, he was laughing in my face. He said, SEALs? Brent, really? I mean, come on, man. I don't really know that much about it, but I definitely know you could never do that. I mean, these guys are supposed to be tough, right? Like world-class warriors? You are not tough. You're kind of a little... I mean, let's face it, you have allergies, really bad allergies, and asthma. I mean, you're wheezing as you speak right now. And you got those chicken legs. That's not gonna work. Remember last week when you cried during that TV commercial? I'm pretty sure SEALs are not stiffly emotional, nerdy guys who cry during Clorox commercials. Let's just forget we ever had this conversation. Let's put this to bed, and why don't you stick with the finance thing, nerd? Well, that son of a bitch. Now I knew I had to do it. Soon after that, I quit my job. My buddy and I moved to Crested Butte, Colorado, where we trained for an additional 6 months at 10,000 feet altitude to get into the best physical condition that we could. Then in early 2000, joined the Navy, and after a couple months of basic training, we were on a plane headed to sunny San Diego, California, where we would begin our journey to becoming SEALs. And I can tell you with exact certainty and clarity, I have never been more nervous in my entire life than the day I stepped foot into the lobby of the Naval Special Warfare Training Center. Because it is a very scary and depressing thing, you veterans in the room will understand this, knowing for a fact that your life is going to be pure hell for many, many months to come. But of course, at this point, there was no turning back. I had to be all in. I'll tell you another interesting fact. It takes 18 months and costs over $1 million, yes, of our hard-earned taxpayer money, to train and create just one Navy SEAL. And that doesn't count the millions of dollars spent on you after you make it to a team. That 18 months is broken down into various segments. The first segment is 6 months long and called BUDS, Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL. If any of you have seen the movie Lone Survivor, it's based on a true story. The opening scenes are actually from a Discovery Channel documentary about BUDS Class 234. I was in Class 235. I was there for all this filming. This will give us just a little taste of what BUDS is all about.
6 times 3. Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. Hurry up. 18. Oh!
Ring the bell 3 times, put your helmet on the ground, you're done.
2 minutes, you don't make it, you do it again! Have you been tested this hard ever in your life?
Never.
Winning here is a conscious decision. Make up your mind whether you want to pass or choose to fail.
All right, now, gentlemen, I'm gonna introduce y'all to something called not being able to breathe.
Andrew, come back. Come back to the light. Take all this shaking and all this cold, harness it, turn it into aggression. You just prove to your bodies, through your mind, that you can push yourself further than you thought possible. Go get wet! Run! I met my limit, so that's it. You sure you want to be here? Yes, I do. Are you absolutely sure? I'm positive! Whatever you have to do, just find an excuse to win. Keep going.
It pays to be a winner!
I like having my buddies that I can depend on, and I would like for them to be able to depend on me.
You guys are our band of brothers.
Doesn't that look fun? Right? Anybody get cold watching that? I do. I get goosebumps still watching that. Now, what you just saw was depicting the first 3 weeks of BUDS. Just the first 3 weeks. And imagine that kind of stuff going on for months. And then after that, the irony is the training just gets harder. I'll tell you another interesting fact. More SEALs today die in training than they do in combat. We'll get into some of that stuff later on during the Q&A. We heard some interesting themes coming from the instructors in those video clips, didn't we? Winning here is a conscious decision. Make up your mind whether you want to pass or choose to fail. Keep moving no matter what. Find an excuse to win. You can push yourself further than your mind or body ever thought possible. Now, I can assure you anything you see on TV or in the movies really doesn't do a shred of justice to the torturous misery that is this portion of SEAL training. I have never been more depressed in my entire life, but I've also never laughed more in my entire life. Because although being physically fit is imperative, it's really more about having the mental fortitude and the positive mental attitude to accept nothing less than success from yourself, to never ever let the thought of quitting into your mind, and frankly to laugh when you would much rather be crying. I usually was actually crying. And that's actually the difference between succeeding and failing in BUDS. Now I look out to this room and clearly, very clearly, I'm looking at a room full of driven, successful individuals that make up an elite team with great leaders, right? Yes? All right. Well, I think we can all agree then, high-performance elite teams are relentless goal setters and goal achievers. That's all BUDS is. It's a series of goals and milestones. They start off simple but challenging and become more challenging and more complex the further you go through training. Success in BUDS isn't about focusing on graduation. It's about getting up every day at 4 o'clock in the morning or earlier and simply focusing on trying to make it to breakfast, and then passing the morning's evolutions and trying to make it to lunch, and so on and so forth, one evolution at a time, one day at a time. Same thing applies in our jobs. We can set all the big long-term lofty goals that we want, but those long-term audacious goals don't mean a thing without a series of more strategic, near-term, achievable goals set along the path to the achievement of that larger goal. It's like the saying, how do you eat an elephant? Anyone? Hey, wow, everybody got that. Usually it's like one person. Thank you, team. One bite at a time, right. You break those big goals down into bite-sized chunks, making them less daunting and more achievable. This, for example, is one of the first milestones you have to pass in BUDS. You saw it in the video, and you heard the instructor with this fine Texas drawl saying, all right, gentlemen, now I'm going to introduce y'all to something called not being able to breathe. Remember that? It's very simple. It's called drown proofing. They tie your ankles together, tie your arms behind your back, toss you in the pool, and for up to about an hour, you are tasked with performing a series of exercises in the exact order they're given to you, all without drowning. See, one simple goal, don't drown, don't die. I like to keep it really simple. KISS method. And it's designed to test one thing. This applies to any type of chaotic and dangerous or stressful job. Will you panic, or will you stay calm with clarity of mind, focused on your objectives? In this case, underwater, when your lungs feel like they're about to explode and the blackness is creeping in around you. Now keep in mind, this is done in a heated pool in Southern California. If you can't stay calm in that environment, how well do you think you're going to do in a gunfight at nighttime on night vision goggles in waist-deep snow in the Hindu Kush mountains of Afghanistan? Probably not too well, right? Now this gentleman on the bottom right there, I'm not too sure what his strategy is. But I don't think he's going to make it too much further through that day. The third week of BUDS, so the third week of this 18-month pipeline is called Hell Week. And again, I can assure you even the term Hell Week does not do a shred of justice to the torturous brutality that is this week-long portion of SEAL training. It too is designed to do one thing, simply to weed out those not solely committed to the mission of becoming a SEAL. You do not sleep for an entire week. You run the equivalent of multiple marathons while wet and sandy, inside and out. You swim dozens and dozens of miles in the open frigid ocean. You run with heavy logs, with heavy boats, with heavy backpacks. Run the obstacle course multiple times a day. Endless calisthenics, brutal beatings, all while battling bruising, lacerations, cuts, stress fractures, broken bones. The most severe chafing you could ever imagine, gentlemen, in all of the areas you would never want to be severely chafed. And then think about salt water into the mix. It's enough to buckle your knees. And pretty much constant second stage hypothermia. One of the ways I give back to the community is to mentor young men into and through the program. And one of my mentees, who just graduated and is on SEAL Team 3 now, we invited the lads over to the house after Hell Week. My wife and I made the mistake of saying, bring some of your buddies, and 8 guys showed up looking like lepers. I mean, you literally look terrible after Hell Week. They walked in like this. My wife's like, put plastic on the couch, put it all over the place. I'm like, honey, we're not doing that. She's like, put it. I don't know why I argue with my wife, I never win. So we put plastic down, we set them up, quarantined them in the living room, ordered a bunch of pizzas, and shut the door. But I was talking to him a couple days later on Sunday, and he tells me now that during Hell Week, they make the guys wear core body temperature monitors the entire time. I'm like, yeah, this is a safety conference. I'm like, yeah, safety first. No! They make them wear core body temperature monitors the entire time so they can track their body temperature to make sure they keep them at second stage hypothermic levels the entire time. Technology is not always our friend, people. I mean, is that not just cruel? Hell Week starts on a Sunday and ends on a Friday afternoon. And I recall it was Tuesday evening of Hell Week for my class. Half the class had already quit. And they had us just like this, lined up on the beach, shoulder to shoulder, facing the Pacific Ocean. We were performing our evening ritual of waving goodbye to the sun as it sets gently over the horizon. They make us perform this ritual every evening. It's the most depressing part of every day in Hell Week, because you know it's going to be a long, cold, miserable, dark night with a brand new, fresh set of instructors that are coming in, fully caffeinated, and eager to kick your ass until the sun comes up. It's very sad. So we're standing there shoulder to shoulder, waving goodbye to the sun, tears gently streaming down our cheeks. I mean, not my cheeks, the other guy's cheeks. An instructor's standing out in front of us, facing the ocean, his hands on his hips, looking all macho, playing the game. Then he turns around to us, and he says, gentlemen, do you know what I'm looking for? I'm looking for a war. And right then the class erupted with hoo-yah! Battle cries, pure bravado and testosterone. We used to call that false motivation, especially in those circumstances. And I remember at that very moment welling with pride and a chill going up my spine because I had second stage hypothermia. But in all seriousness, it's a memorable moment because looking back, I now realize how young and naive we really were, because we were looking for a war, and boy, did we find one, didn't we? You see, my class learned very early on about the pain of loss and sacrifice, about the need to have the ability to control our emotions, be able to step up as leaders at any time, in any position, trust each other as a team at all times, stay focused on the mission, and keep moving forward no matter what happens. So I want to tell you a quick story about our class leader, Lieutenant John Scott. He was the highest ranking officer in our class. It was 2 nights later, Thursday night of Hell Week. It was about 11 p.m. Those of us that were left could see just a little glimmer of the light at the end of the tunnel, because if we made it through Thursday night into Friday afternoon, we'd be secured from Hell Week, and the fine folks there at the training center, they would give us Saturday and Sunday to recover from our broken bodies. And we'd hit it hard again on Monday. It's about 11 o'clock at night on Thursday. They had us in full gear doing relay races in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Then all of a sudden, an instructor gets on a megaphone. He says, get out of the pool, get out of the pool, get with your boat crew, face the fence, and do not look around. So we did as we were told. I mean, it's Hell Week. We're getting yelled at the entire week. We don't care. Get out of the pool, get along the fence. At this point anyways, by Thursday, you have no idea what's going on. You haven't slept since Sunday, your body's totally brutalized, you're hallucinating like a madman, there's leprechauns dancing all in front of you. You're just trying to keep your body moving and make it to Friday. So we got out of the pool, and I remember there was something different about the tone in his voice. It was almost like panic, which I thought was unusual. They got us up, ran us back across the street to the classroom, or to the Special Warfare Center, and put us in a classroom where we waited for a couple hours. And during this waiting period, we realized we were missing a guy, our class leader. But again, we didn't think much of it because he was probably getting briefed on our next inevitable evolution of torture or getting yelled at about some infraction of his leadership capability. But then, a couple hours later, the doors to the classroom open up and the instructor staff walk in, but with them was the lieutenant commander in charge of all SEAL training at the time. He said, "Gentlemen, I need you guys to listen up. Lieutenant John Scott was pronounced dead at 1 a.m. Lieutenant Parado, you're taking over as class leader." And then he paused for a minute to let that sink in. Then he said, "Gentlemen, get used to this feeling that you have right now. This is a dangerous job. This is what it will be like in the SEAL teams, and you are going to lose guys. You have to learn to control your emotions, step up as a leader at any given time, trust each other as a team at all times, stay focused on your objectives, and keep moving forward no matter what." And he had no idea how right he really was, because the few of us that finished Hell Week and went on to finish BUDS, 6 months later, the day before we started advanced training, was 9/11. And that's when we all knew we'd be going to war. This picture is intentionally grainy to preserve identities. 1,000 guys applied for our BUDS class. Of that 1,250 were selected to start training. Ultimately, only 23 graduated, earning the right to wear the SEAL Trident pin. The interesting thing about this pin is it's one of the only emblems in the United States military where the eagle's head is actually fully bowed in memory of those that forged the path ahead of us. Another line from the SEAL Creed says, "My trident is a symbol of honor and heritage, bestowed upon me by the heroes that have gone before. It embodies the trust of those that I am bound to defend. It is a privilege that I must earn every day." Our jobs, in any setting, as part of any team, is a privilege we have to earn every single day simply by asking ourselves, what am I going to do today to be the best, most valuable, and effective member of this team that I can be? Now, setting and achieving these lofty goals in life is always quite an accomplishment. It always feels good. But I bet if I asked you guys to reflect back to one of those days in your life, to the very day you achieved one of those goals, maybe it was making the varsity team in high school or landing your dream job here, which is probably it. I bet if you reflected back to that very day, you might have said, wow, the real work has only just yet begun. You see, as a new SEAL checking into a SEAL team, of course, the general consensus amongst your peers, and again, you vets will get this, is, so what, new guy? To them, you've accomplished absolutely nothing yet. You were there to keep your mouth shut, your eyes and ears open, to learn, earn their respect, and earn your right to be part of that team every single day. Because trust me, life in the teams and in combat makes BUDS and all that scary training look like a walk in the park. The same thing applies in our jobs, in our careers. We can work so hard to do the job every day, a dangerous job, but that's not the time to sit back and rest on our laurels ever. We always have to be on it. It's not the time to relax. That's the time we have to ante up, stay focused, and kick in individually and together as a team. And if we do that in life and in our jobs, we're setting and achieving those lofty goals and staying focused at all times. Sure, there'll be challenging times ahead, of course, but that's why we say in the SEAL teams, the only easy day was yesterday. My team, SEAL Team 5, was in fact the very first SEAL task unit deployed to Iraq in early 2003. Our job is to perform capture or kill missions, hunting down the guys on the deck of cards, the blacklist, and other various insurgent faction leaders. I found these old pictures and I thought this was kind of funny. This is a before and after of our very, very first combat mission. You can see here on the left, standing there, looking very, very tough and menacing, ready to take on the enemy. Is it me or do I look 11 years old? 11. That's not scary. That's not going to intimidate anybody. That's why I wore my balaclava all the time. And that's me, several gunfights, and 15 hours later, hair standing on end like I've been electrocuted. I've sweat through my uniform several times over. I look stressed and tired. Imagine doing that hundreds and hundreds of times over and over again. That's why I look and feel the way I do today. After 3 combat tours, I left the SEAL teams, went back to school, met my business partner, and started our first company. And using these guiding principles that we learned in the SEAL teams, training and in combat, leadership, teamwork, persistence, adaptation, trust, communication, accountability, we've managed to grow our company into one of the fastest growing private companies in the US. But of course, we've made a lot of mistakes, we've experienced many failures along the way, and therefore we've learned a lot throughout this journey. Now earlier I mentioned that we'd be talking about how elite teams in a more civilian setting can leverage trust, teamwork, and accountability to achieve higher levels of performance. So what does it mean to be part of an elite team, like you guys? And how do elite teams really truly win and achieve success? Well, first and foremost, elite teams have sound leadership at all levels. Leaders that know and do what it takes to be successful. They're results focused. They take decisive action. They're emotionally intelligent, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. They know how to motivate and inspire different types of people in different ways. They embrace change and know how to align a team towards the execution of a specific vision. But even more importantly, elite teams are comprised of team members who have a clear and concise understanding of their mission, and hopefully they believe in it. They know what's expected of themselves, their peers, and their leaders. They hold themselves accountable at all times. They hold one another accountable. They strive for excellence in all things they do. They have a shared sense of purpose and an unwavering trust and loyalty towards one another. As you can imagine in combat, when those bullets start flying, politics and all that other crap goes right out the window. The time for individual achievement is over, and it becomes one team with one fight. You're no longer fighting for your country. You are fighting simply to protect the brother on your left, the brother on your right, and that's it. You're not fighting because you hate the enemy in front of you. You're fighting because you love and respect the team member standing next to you. Now imagine if we could replicate that value system and culture in our own civilian organizations, no matter what they are. What an unbreakable bond that would create, and what I believe to be a distinct and measurable advantage over our competition. Not always necessarily easy to do when lives aren't on the line, but they are on the line oftentimes, aren't they? Well, since authentic and effective leadership at all levels in a team is critical for its success, let's first take a look at what makes a good leader. And again, I'm not just talking about the people at the top. I'm talking about every single member of the team. Earlier I referenced the movie Lone Survivor. Has anybody read the book, seen the movie? A few of you. It's based on a true story of 4 SEALs being inserted high in the Hindu Kush mountains of Afghanistan on a reconnaissance mission looking for a known Taliban leader. Unfortunately, soon after their insertion, they were discovered and surrounded by over 100 Taliban fighters from an elevated position. These 4 men fought bravely for over 5 hours, killing over half that Taliban force. Ultimately, only one survived to tell the tale. The guy on the left here is Michael Murphy. He was the team leader on the mission and awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions on the mountain that day. We went through buds together. He was a good friend and even better leader. Realizing that his men would not survive this fight, he made the decision to call for support. And after initially failing to get reception on his satellite phone, he made the decision to take the risk to climb to higher ground in order to make that call and save his men. He did so, and was then shot 4 more times during that call, ultimately sacrificing himself for his team. So what does it mean to be a good leader at any level? What types of emotional intelligence is required for effective leadership? Emotional intelligence is about recognizing one's own and other people's emotions. It's about discriminating between certain types of feelings and categorizing them appropriately, and using emotional information to guide our thinking and behavior. But what does that have to do with leadership? And what traits are imperative for effective leadership? Self-awareness. That's our ability to recognize our own thoughts, feelings, goals, drivers, values, and emotions, and more importantly, their effect on others. Discipline. Our ability to control or redirect our disruptive emotions and adapt in a changing environment. Social skill. This is about having good communication skills with our team members and managing relationships to move people in a desired direction. Empathy, sometimes the hardest one, taking other people's thoughts, feelings, and ideas into consideration, especially when making decisions. Motivation, the drive to achieve simply for the sake of achievement. Humility, always putting the needs of the team before our own. And passion, a deep belief in the mission and the team that drives that mission forward. And these emotional competencies are not innate talents, but rather learned capabilities that have to be worked on and developed over time to achieve higher levels of performance and take collective action towards common goals. I'm going to go ahead and get the elephant out of the room because this came up at last night's presentation where my wife was. Afterwards, she came up to me, she's like, "Were you wearing pants in that picture?" I'm like, "Yeah, honey, I'm wearing pants. I'm not going to put a naked picture of myself up. I'm wearing black running shorts, okay? We're all clear on that?" Okay, maybe you guys weren't thinking that. Maybe it was my wife. Leadership in a high-performance team exists at all levels. It's not just about the people at the very top, but rather the innate ability of every single member of the team to take on roles and responsibilities outside of their own job description in order to help the team accomplish the mission. It's about translating individual performance into team accomplishment. It's about being proactive, collaborative, bringing solutions to the table and challenging the system, the team, and oneself at all times. Now, over the years, I've learned many things about leadership, mostly through costly mistakes and failures, of course. But one is that there is a distinct difference between the discipline of management and the discipline of leadership. Management is about coping with complexity and managing people and tasks, whereas leadership is about coping with change and aligning a team towards the execution of a specific vision. Now, both disciplines are very important. They can be harnessed within one individual, but both require constant personal and professional development, regular transparent feedback from your fellow team members, self-reflection, and taking action on that feedback received. And over the years, whether it's leading teams in combat or at a growing marketing agency, very similar, I boiled it down to 5 principles that I think are imperative for being part of a high-performance and elite team. First, we have to create, and it's up to all of us to do this, create a culture of leadership. That starts at the top, but of course bleeds down throughout the entire organization. Then we have to identify those emergent leaders within the team, put them in the right roles, give them the tools and resources to be successful, thereby creating a solid foundation and framework for decision-making and execution at all levels. We also have to make the team feel safe. A great general once said, "You cannot manage people into combat. They must be led." Now, sometimes our teams and team members need more leadership than they do management. I know it's hard to imagine anybody feeling safe in a combat environment, but when the team trusts one another and they have that shared sense of purpose, they trust the leaders to make good decisions, or sometimes just any decision at all will do, especially when the shit's really hitting the fan, it actually creates an overwhelming sense of safety and security. And it's up to all of us in a high-performance team to make our fellow team members feel safe and supported, to stay calm under pressure, communicate effectively, provide the right resources, and remove obstacles. We also have to be able to manage through chaos. Chaos in combat, of course, is inevitable. In other lines of work, I like to refer to it as, more softly, adaptive change. And all disciplines and jobs and careers go through a series of adaptive change. Change that we have to adapt to, and as we know, change can be scary for the team, especially in stressful jobs. And it's our job to make sure that everybody understands what the change is all about, why it's important, what the positive outcomes of that change are going to be, and more importantly, what everybody's role is in affecting that change. We also have to embrace the philosophy of servant leadership. In my various leadership studies, I read another book by Stephen Pressfield called The Afghan Campaign. It's about Alexander the Great's push through Afghanistan in 330 BC. Despite his insufferable arrogance and ambition, he was actually the epitome of a servant leader, literally leading tens of thousands of men into battle from the very front. And servant leadership is a very simple, but sometimes difficult to execute act of leadership, but it's really just about not asking our fellow team members to do something we are not willing to do ourselves. And similarly, always eat last. In the military, it's tradition that officers or senior leaders eat last after all the other team members have eaten. And sometimes there's no food left, unfortunately. But I'm using it as a metaphor because when we sacrifice for our team members, they will in turn sacrifice for us and do everything in their power to execute the mission and vision of the organization.